And so a few of us are going to say a couple of things about our former class president. And I thought in terms of pecking order, we'd start with the very top and ask Roz Jordan to speak first about Michael.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much. Of course, he said brief, but you know.
Just kidding.
On behalf of Mike, his mother, who he adored and who would have been with us today, but who unfortunately died last month, his sisters, Donna, Susan, and Eileen, who are all here today with their wonderful husbands, along with 3 of Mike's nieces and nephews, Allison, Curtis, Ann, and Anton, his brother Peter, who unfortunately was not able to join us today, my sister Mary, who is here today, and myself. I would like to say a big, big thank you to the ever terrific Chancellor Keith Motley and the University of Massachusetts for the great honor they have bestowed on Mike. I want to also thank Mike's classmates for honoring him, and to thank those of my wonderful cousins and friends who were able to come today. Mike was truly a tremendously lucky person. He had many, many great friends, and I am pleased that some of them were able to come today and join us. Unfortunately for Mike, it was I who they had to ask to give names and addresses of people to come today. Now, I readily admit that Mike was the terrific and talented organizer, and he undoubtedly would have stayed in touch and had that great ability to stay in touch with people. So had he been the one to organize this event today, there would have been tons of people. We would have been out on the ground. But I want to thank Mary Ann Nash for her wonderful speech. She was one of those great friends of Mike and Chris and Peg and Joe Newman, who are here today, and Patty, who they mentioned, and numerous others who Mike was so very proud of, and he would be tremendously proud to see all that they have accomplished since his death. Mike was indeed a very special person. He was someone who truly actually enjoyed helping other people. For him, helping others was never a chore, never something he felt forced to do. It was his way. He felt it was why he was put on earth. He wanted to see people get ahead, to see them succeed, to live happy and wonderful lives. And anything that he could do to help make that possible, it was a joy for him. Mike was someone who did really enjoy life. He loved his friends and his family, and he had a great sense of humor. So consequently, he was tremendous fun to be with, and people really wanted to be his friend. He was someone for whom politics was not a dirty word, but a means to achieve a greater good for all people, not just the select few. I know how much the honor today would have meant to Mike, although I know he undoubtedly would have wanted me to say that he would have preferred that this tree planting be taking place at an expanded Park Square campus, which is, of course, where he thought the University of Boston should remain. But aside from that small issue, I think he would have been most appreciative of the fact that there will be a tree growing in his memory. He was, after all, at one point in his career, the head of the Massachusetts Forest and Park Association. I think he ultimately would be pleased that the tree will be growing at a site that looks out over the water. Growing up in Swampscott, I think instilled in Mike a love and respect for the ocean and the creatures therein, and its importance to the planet, which came into play when he was active in efforts to stop offshore drilling in the Georges Banks. I also know how proud Mike was of UMass Boston. I myself found out what a great university it was when I took part in the early years after his death in selecting students for the scholarship that was established in his name, to which over 1,500 of his friends and family contributed. I saw firsthand the remarkable diversity of this campus, this great place. The diversity of young, old, from all racial and ethnic, economic, and social backgrounds, all are truly welcomed at UMass Boston and given the high quality education they need to help them succeed. It is in some ways a magical place that I hope remains so, and that will someday be the norm, not the exception among higher education institutions. I watched over the years the transformative impact that UMass Boston had on the students who were awarded scholarships. The first year after Mike died, just to give him a little tweak, Ms. Chris can attest, he, the liberal, and so very proud of it, he might as well have had it tattooed on his forehead. We gave one of the scholarships to a young man just out of high school, who, shall we say, was a very far to the right. His favorite columnist being Don Fetter. At the end of his time at UMass, this young man had turned into virtually a socialist, perhaps out-liberally even Mike. So I guess you can see who won that tweak. On the other hand, that same year we gave a scholarship to another young man who was a liberal, not that that was part of the criteria, and pretty much an anti-establishment, let's protest activist. The last I heard of him, he had become a police officer in Dallas, Texas. Transformative impact, in more ways than one, I guess. So thanks again to all of you here today who were so special to Mike, and to UMass Boston. May it continue to be a place that others finally follow. And let's hope that the tree continues to grow. As Mary Ann, who got my line here, so I'm gonna have to say the same thing to you again. And my wonderful Uncle Bob, who unfortunately died last December, but who would have been here today with us, had always wanted to do. He wanted to plant a pink dogwood tree up at Mike's grave. So I guess there might be something to that notion of people reaching us from the beyond after all, because he got his way all right. So it's great, and thank you again.
I'm going to ask Chris Greeley to step up for a moment and share a couple of his memories of Michael, or stories that are appropriate Chris stories.
A couple?
Just
Michael Ventresca. That's V as in Victor. E-N-T-R-E-S-C-A. Anybody ever heard him on the phone? That's Michael Ventresca. V as in Victor. E-N-T-R-E-S-C-A. I must say with all my heart that it is an honor to have this opportunity. Jim asked me to speak and told me it was to be upbeat, tell a few Michael stories, so here I am. For many reasons, I wish I didn't have this chance to remember Michael, but my guess is if he were here, and he is, he would just tell me to suck it up and get it done. I really did think of ducking it, however, because of the responsibility and the difficulty of trying to pick a best of. I mean, when it comes to Ventresca stories, it's like having to choose from Sergeant Pepper or White Owl, Born to Run. But given my stellar track record at Boston University, and since this will be as close as I'll ever come to participate in the graduation, I thought I'd take it up. Thanks. I met Michael Ventresca in 1979 when Senator Edward Kennedy began his run for the presidency. I was 26, just back from a couple of years caddying on the Pro Golf Tour, attending bar in Kenmore Square, no college degree, having just escaped a job where I was in charge of moving computer punch cards from office to office. In other words, my career is off to a stellar start. But I had gone down to watch the senator announce his candidacy at Faneuil Hall, and I saw all these guys running around in blue suits and red ties. Blue suits and red ties. And I didn't know what they were doing, but I was pretty sure I could probably do that. So I volunteered, and my first job was the recruiting of college kids to go up to New Hampshire on behalf of Senator Kennedy. Sure, no, the campaign will feed you and we'll put you up. And the next week, no, it's going to be better than pizza and it won't be a tent this time. No, really, we really need you. I remember they those calls. So it was 84 State Street where I had a desk, a phone, and a list. And I'd sit out in front of that office with Patty Foley and Happy Green and call and call and call. Where for me, seeing Tommy O'Neill was a thrill. It was here that I first laid my eyes on Michael Ventresca. Now, I didn't know it was Michael Ventresca. What I knew and saw was this kind of pudgy little man. He claimed he was just short. Anyway, the short man with the most unkempt hair since Einstein, who on most days displayed the most casual mode of dress. You guys remember that leather hat? Wow, Jesus, what a look. Unbelievable. Later, after I actually worked with Michael for a while, I asked him, did he really think that look worked for him? And he said, well, it's just hard being a sex symbol. And always the cup of coffee. Always the cup of coffee. But never any briefcase or any other accessory that would give you a clue that this whirling dervish was in charge of this whole stage. What he did have was charisma. He was electric, and energy crackled off him. Any volunteer in his path was engaged and encouraged. Any staffer was attacked and challenged. When he came off that elevator at 84 State, the climate on that whole floor changed instantly. His energy and passion was at once exhilarating and a little frightening. Now, 84 State had a big old front office where all the volunteers worked, and then there was the back. People were in the back. The back was where all the big shots were. So those of us who are out front, we really would get these glimpses of Michael, you know, and then he would be in the back. Now, you would hear once in a while, Jesus Christ, I can't get you any more money. Raise it yourself. What do you mean the senator can't be in Lewiston? Does he want to win this thing or not? Jesus Christ. Only slamming down. But you wouldn't, you know, see, next time you'd see him, it was usually around 9 o'clock when the pizza came out. For me, my big break came when Happy Green told me that Michael needed an assistant and what I'd like to interview. Yes, ma'am. That's in the back, right? Yes, ma'am. The interview was conducted while he was on the phone, yelling at Paul Eustace, apologizing to Mary Frackleton for swearing, getting Steve Rothstein to write a check for some field activity, promising he'd make it up with field fundraising, and reading the Globe. The interview went about like this. What's your name? Chris. What do you do? 10 bar. Can you be here every day? Yes. Every day. Yeah. You know anything about politics? No. Good, that means you don't have any bad habits. Let's get you a desk. So he stole Paul Eustace's desk. That's what he gets for leaving early. He kicked a hole in the wall between his office and Marianne Marsh and Jack Weeks so the phone line could be run through. He told me to call Governor Garrity in Rhode Island to set up a day for Senator Kennedy down there. After about 10 minutes of paralysis, Mike, why would the governor talk to me? In almost an Archie Bunkerish kind of look, he sort of scritched up his face and gave it a big, jeez, what do I got here? You work for effing Ted Kennedy. Excuse me. My time with Michael changed my life forever. Michael practiced the art of politics like Jackson Pollock painted it. And he was all over the place, but trust me, it really was an art. Michael used a campaign as a canvas, and we were all his brushes. But for me, he was a teacher. He taught me and he challenged me, and he wouldn't allow me to fail. What did Michael teach me? What did I learn from this magical little man? I learned that politics is a game of addition, matched by common sense. And that 8th CD race came up, and Michael at first thought he was going to be with Tom Vallely. You know, it's fine. You know, all of a sudden he heard Joe Kennedy was in the race. Whoosh! And I said, well, geez, Mike, I mean, I thought you were going to, my God. He said, Chris, let me tell you something. There isn't a race. The Kennedy kid wins. Move on. He taught me that you got to be around. Okay? I worked for John Kerry in the first weekend after he'd been elected, been installed as lieutenant governor. I'm a late 20-something. It's a Saturday morning, so you could suspect I was sleeping in a bed. Buzzer on the door, buzzer on the door, buzzer on the door. What are you doing on Saturday? You got to be around. We're going to work. And he dragged me out of that apartment, dragged me down to the lieutenant governor's office, so I would be around and meet the Capitol Police and just be around. So I learned that leaders hand out flyers and do standouts. Michael was in charge of the Kennedy campaign in Philadelphia, and every night he held a sign, and every morning he handed out flyers. Leaders hand out flyers and do standouts. I learned that your word matters. I learned that, by the way, especially when you're traveling, When the job's done, get out of town. Okay? The Philadelphia race was called at about 11. We were in a car at 5:30. We were out of Dodge. Never, ever trust advance people. They are here to kill you. Do not ever trust an advance person. The phone bank reports that end in 5s or 0s are fraudulent. Nobody makes exactly the amount of phone calls that end in 5s or 0s. He taught me that the Philadelphia Pen and Pencil Club was the best after-hours joint in the city. He taught me that it was okay to sing Born to Run at 3 a.m. in the morning on the street. Finally, Michael V. taught me that people matter, and a campaign was a living, breathing thing that for staff and volunteers alike was their life, or at least it was if they were any good. That there was to be a seat on any campaign bus for anyone, no matter what their IQ or what their skill set. If someone wanted in, my job was to find them a place. I love Michael Ventresca, and I still do. The 1980 campaign was my first exposure to the big-time world of politics, and I believe that selflessness, the get-it-done attitude, and the work hard, play hard, watch your teammates back was the norm. I thought all campaigns ran that way. In fact, very few campaigns ran that way. And I'd like to think that during my political career, I might have come close to emulating. I ran a campaign in '96 that was maligned but won, and perhaps more importantly, produced a couple of marriages and a host of kids that are now running things all across this town. Our core watched out for each other, and trust me, my mind was on Mikey V while Bill Well bought John Kerry a beer. So my day will always have room for informational interviews. I feel like I was a student, so perhaps I was the first Ventresca Scholarship student. Let's make sure there are many, many more. Thank you.
That's why we invited Chris Greeley to say hello. You did give the BU kid a little time, extra time there. We've got 3 of our classmates who are going to finish up, Kathy and Art and Rick. I'm going to start with Kathy Sheehan for a couple of our kind of class of '69 Ventresca moments.
I really only have a few things to say, but I did want to make sure that I spoke to this class about how important people like Mike Ventresca were as we started out freshmen in 1965. And that people like Mike were unsung heroes, pulling the class together, introducing people to each other, always with the sense of equality and commonality. So that's all I had to say.
Maverick, you know, we all got involved in politics. We began campaigning, and we had some fun at school, and Mike and I would occasionally get together, and somebody had to finish second.
Occasionally.
Our class vice president sometimes, student council vice president, and a generous, kind friend of the university, Ahmed.
It's a pleasure to see you all here today, and to Mike's family in particular, this lovely ceremony that we had. And thank you, Jim. It is an honor. I never had the opportunity of roasting Mike. And this has somewhat turned into a bit of a roast here. And I'm sure he's looking down on all of us now and having a good chuckle as well. But I learned a lot from Michael. And it just occurred to me today while we were chatting that I'm probably the first person that Michael in his political career truly defeated. This fine man here was our junior class president, and I was the junior class vice president. We ran a spirited campaign for the student council in our senior class, and I happened to come out on top on votes, thanks to many of my colleagues and friends, and your votes here too, so thank you very much. I very much appreciate it.
Your 40 years on.
Absolutely. But president was not to be. Jim backed Mike, and we had, I believe, 8 or 9 ballots that went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And neither one of us could get enough votes to end up being elected president of the student council. Finally, Peter Bradley, I don't know, I haven't seen Peter today. Has anyone seen Peter? Oh, Peter hopefully will be here tonight. Peter had 3 votes, and he kept going back and forth between Michael and myself, trying to figure out who'd strike the best deal. Well, I think I ended up offering him a 6-pack or a case, and I think Michael ended up giving him a cake. Needless to say, Michael was elected. I learned from Michael the fine art of politics, and maybe Michael had some experiences too, based upon what happened between us all. But Jim, Michael, all of us here, I mean, we had a great time at the university. It was an experience, and it's just unfortunate that Michael's passing had to be so early. I know it's happened to many of us. I lost a sister very young. My wife lost a sister and a brother very young. We've all had events like this that have been unplanned, but may Michael's memory be eternal. God bless him. Thank you.
A few of us had this extraordinary experience of actually living with Ventresca. Rick Scovel described only some. I told Rick there's a rule, there's the no broads and booze rule, Rick. Rick said in that case he couldn't speak at all. Rick Scovel has lived with Michael, I think, extensively, and actually ended up being a narc and a fit. It didn't take connection at all.
Thank you very much. Jim asked me to say a couple of things, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. I was Mike's roommate for 3 years, and we went through a number of roommates, and I guess I was the one that stuck. Jim was one of our first roommates. We lived on Casanova Street, and a 3-floor walk-up. Five. We're at the very top of this thing. I think Jim and Mike picked it out. We had wall-to-wall cockroaches. Our rent was about $75. $85 for all that luxury. And we all painted our rooms, and Jim and Mike suggested we paint the cockroaches too, so if they showed up in someone else's room, they'd be responsible for it. Be that as it may, but we then moved. Oh, by the way, I have to mention this, that we had some very spirited discussions. My father was a career fighter pilot. Jim was there, and he had his own ideas, as did Mike, so we had some spirited discussions in there, as you can imagine. We did have, Mike brought what little class we had to the apartment by bringing his original artwork. One of them was called The Memorable Frozen Sky and Water, which was a great piece of something over there.
Multi-layers.
Multi-layers. Someone mentioned his hair, and I'll tell you, getting out of bed, everybody goes, fix his hair, off he'd go to class, with us in tow, 5 minutes before the class would start. That was him. We moved down to a luxury suite on the first floor the following year, and same sort of problems we had down there. Another couple of roommates, and we had parties. We talked about Mike's sense of humor. Well, we threw some parties in that place, invited every soul in the city. And inevitably, Boston's finest would show up 1, 2 o'clock and tell us we had to keep quiet. Mike would lecture them on the constitutionality. And most of these didn't have a happy ending for the party.
Were either of those apartments the one where the Christmas tree had to be hung upside down through the ceiling? You didn't have enough room?
That would have been number 2. That would have been Actually, Jim, I could say something about Jim. We got all ready for Halloween one time. It was Jim's favorite time of the year. He went out and bought probably about $20 worth of candy, which was an awful lot of candy back in those days. And put candles out and got all excited and waiting for all the kids to show up, and not one kid showed up. 5th floor, in a pretty dreadful neighborhood. So I think he went downstairs and just dropped it on the first child to walk by. As I was remembering Mike, I was thinking, well, I've got loads of stories, and some of them for Jim's instructions I can't really talk about right now. He was a terrific guy. I mean, that picture you have on the tree planting with him, that was him. His face was scrunched, he had that smile on his face all the time. I didn't know whether he had too many beers or he was thinking of something devious to do or say. He was a terrific guy. We moved from that place to, well, let me just step back real quickly, and I'll be brief, Jim. I don't want to take all the time over here, but one day, coming back from our place to the university was just a couple of blocks. We just had to walk by the library and then come over to our place. And he and it might have been you, Jim, might have been Ralph, stumbled upon one of life's unfortunates passed out in the snow. And picked him up and gave him all the money he had and put him in someplace warm. So that was typical of the compassion, and you don't see in a college freshman or sophomore. We had other things on our mind back then. But he never lost the social consciousness that we all developed back then. We all developed. It was a tumultuous times, as you know, the late '60s, and we had all been through a lot. And I think we all picked that up at the university, that social consciousness. And I don't have to tell anybody in this place, in this audience, what kind of times we were living through back then. And when we all left UMass, I think with the greatest of intentions to concentrate our efforts in making our communities and cities and the country a better place, a lot of us lost our focus with military service, with graduate degrees, marriage, families, careers, and so forth. He did not. He remained true to his ideals and did exactly, I think, as with his life as he had planned. And I'd like to mention one other thing to the Ventresca family, and my condolences to the loss of your mother. She was terrific. Mike would take me home on weekends for respite, as it were, away from the ketchup and mustard sandwiches that we would have on occasion. Sometimes we'd have a red sauce, I'm not sure what that was. And she would feed us, make sure we were fed, and then fed again. Always had beautiful music playing, and Barbra Streisand comes to mind. That was always just wonderful place for me personally, and for the boys. She took good care of us. So, I can go on and on. We just had the best 3 years ever, and I truly miss him, and I appreciate being on speaking here today.
Quite some time on the stories. The Casanova Street story was a classic because it was a fifth floor walk up. We get with Ventresca, we get this place. We get with Scovel and a guy named Bruce Kirby, one of a kind if ever there was one. First weekend, to us it's home, it's a dive. We go home to a real house with real food. And when I come back on Monday, I come back Monday morning and there are pictures hung, there are curtains everywhere. I thought I was in the wrong place. Mrs. Ventresca had been there over the weekend. Curtains, pictures, and food in the refrigerator. But that was extraordinary. Michael changed lives. He changed many, many, many lives. I'm supposed to announce at 2 o'clock. I'm going to announce this thing out there in a minute. It's 2 o'clock.
We have a symposium.
I know. I'm going to make sure everybody knows that you guys took science and we didn't. Poli-sci major. I mean,
You did a great job with the flowers.
Except for that white thing. The 17 Cath was extraordinary, and Michael was extraordinary, but life's changes. Just 2 really quick stories. We get into the Spanish class. Thank God for the late Paul Gagnon, the dean, who forced us to take 3 years of Spanish. And luck of the draw, I end up with guys named Weidenfeller, Keating, and Ventresca in the Spanish class. And we know nothing. I mean, we're stuck there. And we're not going to speak any Spanish. I mean, what Michael created, if you did something, you got it wrong, you tried real hard, he'd say dos mal, which is too bad. Dos mal. Mrs. Rosenblatt, oh no. He say dos males. And then if you remember Betsy Mann, we love Betsy Mann. She was in our Spanish class. Señorita Hombre. For 4 years, we got that. But Michael, with the Spanish class, now those guys all end up, so Michael said, there's this election. They put this in the paper, we're going to run for student council. Michael says, Jim, you got to run. Run for what? He said, I never run in my life. No, you run. I'll take care of it. We go home, we come back on Monday. There had to be 600 signs in school. People running for something, 400 of which had my name on it. All made by Ventresca. And we get elected, and I end up with like a career out of this damn thing. All because of Ventresca. But that was one of so many. this morning we back to the old campus, and Earl Gashin, is Earl still here? Earl tells me a story, which is it's the ultimate Ventresca story. Our senior week, you all might have, I don't think it'd be you, Chris, but they didn't do this. Ventresca rents 3 airplanes. We're gonna go to Hare in New York. We're gonna go to Broadway. Now, the Park Square has a Greyhound bus terminal. Anybody else would have had us on those damn buses, not Ventresca. Senior week, we get airplanes. We go to Logan Airport. Most of us had never been on an airplane. We fly to New York. We're in Broadway. We have a matinee. We get half the house is ours, and we're seeing Hare. And we're flying, you know, the whole thing. We're walking around all over the size of that building, and it was all Ventresca. The whole senior week, just the creativity, just outside the box. There was no parks at all. I mean, it was like, you know, amazing that in Europe, folks. But it was just classic Ventresca that we would just do crazy things like that. But I get through politics, which he got me started in. I get elected to the legislature. He comes, grabs me. We're going to law school. I said, Mike, I'm all set. I got this thing going on here. No, you're going to law school. I go to law school only because of him. I drop out because I hate it. He said, oh, you're going back. And it's my career. Now, I'm one of thousands, hundreds, many dozens, who knows, that he made that happen. He made the politics happen, he made the law school happen, and I'm just one guy. And boy, he made fun happen. I did the Pennsylvania thing. Kennedy had to win Pennsylvania to stay alive with Carter. He had to win Pennsylvania. You know anything about politics, you got to win Philadelphia to win Pennsylvania. And he's in charge of Philadelphia. I show up with a couple dozen people, I don't know, 15 or 18 people I bring down from Boston. I go to the headquarters, where's Ventresca? Not here. Geez, I got all these people, we drove down. It's across the street. Where's he across the street? He's at his headquarters. It's a gin mill. There's about 20 people sitting around this giant table. One guy in the middle in army fatigues. He's running Philadelphia. And the entire campaign is based on that. Kennedy wins Pennsylvania. That's Ventresca. Anyway, we're gonna close because at 2 o'clock, which we've blown by, and we can tell stories for a long time. We're gonna hear from Donna. I'm supposed to announce about a symposium that those of you who took the science courses ought to want to go to. But let me introduce Donna, then we'll close. Donna Healey is Michael's, I'd say, sister, younger sister, kid sister.
1 year older. 4 of us born in 5 years.
So,
And then the 5th one came along as a surprise. Thank you. Thank you. Mom, I just want you to know, knew about this gathering. Paula called a week before Mom died, and right up until 2 days before she died on May 2nd, she was continually amazed, grateful, and proud of the way you and the university have continued to perpetuate Michael's memory and honor his life. And we thank you all. Thank you very much.
College of Science and Mathematics Symposium is on the 3rd floor at Wheatley, and Mavitt and BuzzQ, those guys actually took those courses, and Mavitt did very well apparently. We perhaps took some other courses perhaps, might have made out a little bit better, but that's going on at the 3rd floor at Wheatley. Also, this class, of all 40 graduating classes, this class has the highest percentage of contributors to this university. And that is only and by the way, it ain't even close. And that's primarily because of the Ventresca scholarship. At the middle of your table, you'll find one of these. And what we're going to do is a class, the charter class of 69, we're going to, in the next few months, you'll hear from us, and I hope many of you will be a part of this, as we try to reach out to all of our classmates and come very close to full participation in supporting this scholarship, which the Michael Ventresca Charter Class Scholarship will be a part of this university for an awful long time. What Michael did and what this class did is why this place is what it is today. Thank you all for coming for lunch, and we'll see you either at the symposium or if somehow we don't start without us if we're not there. But there is a cocktail hour at 6:30 tonight, which I suspect we'll see a lot of you at. Dinner's at 7:30 right in this area. Thank you.